That's an interesting question. The old and new, right?
The old and new.
Old and the new.
Old and new, right?
Put of music.
In art as well, we always reference the senior artists, the people that come before us.
Like our Raffles building, our National Gallery. So we always combine the old and the new because we don't want to forget the old, right?
Maybe I guess that is how we can infuse the old and new, where we repurpose the building that is already there and we just make use for the future.
That time, it was 1965, right? I was a 24-year-old. I envisaged that we should have multifunction buildings, live upstairs, work downstairs, right? In other words, a shop house writ large. That space down there where the offices are is a cave. I was inspired when I went to visit the caves in Kuala Lumpur. And when I went in, I was surprised that the temperature was so cool. And that is because the sun doesn't go in there, and therefore the spaces and the surrounding structures are not heated up by the sun. Therefore, there's a constant cool temperature. And that's what I created here, right? So this is the Batu Caves.
I've come across Golden Mile Complex when I'm studying architecture. Personally, I was very interested in the shops and atrium areas and how the shops are being laid out where there are different zones and different walkways that people can explore and perhaps get lost in the space in the shopping mall.
During its time, it was really a landmark and a groundbreaking piece of work, right? Because you must understand that during those times in the 70s, the architectural industry in Singapore was very much of a fledgling industry. They were finding its way, and of course there were a lot of famous architects coming into Singapore to slowly develop, but yet I think Golden Mile was one of those that was really came up from the ground, or originally designed by our local architects.
This building has no frills. It's raw. They call it brutalist. That's a wrong term. It's just an honest building. It's just being true to itself and to the context.
Every architect, if you ask him, they don't like to be pigeonholed, right? But I think here is a response of an architect trying to use, concrete is not a new material, by the way, but the way it has been applied on Golden Mile, even then, it was actually done quite long ago. So the structure and the surface are being expressed in a very, very natural and underdone state. So you see what it is, the natural color of the gray of the concrete. So the idea of something being very solid, being very everlasting.
If you look at architecture styles during that time, right, in the 1970s, people are looking towards Japan, where metabolist architecture is really booming. Really, you're talking about how can you densify buildings. Golden Mile, you can see that really it's packing things like shopping malls, things like supermarkets, residentials, offices, all into one building.
Golden Mile Complex represents that period in which Singapore decision makers were prepared to try things that have never been tried before. This is an innovation. We dare to try, because the idea of work and life and home as separate is actually a very dehumanizing, you know. The human being must live in an environment in which his family, his life, his work, his passions, his needs are all together, so that the thinking, the mind is not compartmentalized. That's our challenge. So multifunction buildings are very crucial.
If you think about how Golden Mile is perhaps being designed, it's definitely designed in terms of the city. And, you know, we always say that buildings are designed for people. Right now, it's have a character of being a Thai city, Thai town, right? Little Thailand, I think that's what they call it. And in this case, perhaps it's the Thai community that they really need a place to belong, a place to really have a character on their own, set up a community. Golden Mile is visionary at that point of time. And why? Because really it was one of the first few mixed-use establishment.
However, on the reverse side of the building, I think you can see evidence that a lot of the house owners have introduced a lot of sun shading and shelters to keep out the rain, to keep out the heat. And that's because the sloping part of that building really is not suited for our kind of climate. That was the part that was not so successful. You know, for a country to develop a kind of style of architecture it takes a long time, right? We are only just shy of 60 years of independence, right? So I don't think there is an evolved style yet. But I see small efforts, which I think will become into big efforts for architects who are looking at sustainability as the driving force of design. Some of our architects have begun to do that. And that perhaps could be our first Singapore style, right? Nothing to do with flamboyant forms, but informed forms that is based on a very functional and meaningful response to climatic problems and conditions.
If you talk about the layman Singapore style, maybe people will think about HDBs and how really buildings in Singapore are naturally cooled. If you actually visit Golden Mile and you walk through some of the spaces and some of the staircase areas, you can see that plasters are being worn out and they fall to the floor. You can see patches in the ceiling.
Of course, everything else, even a diamond, right? If you don't take care of it, it will lose its luster. That's why you have to send it for polishing and things like that. I believe that the single developer, he will put in the resources to maintain the building and to first bring it up to its original glory that it had, right? And hopefully maintain it throughout.
How I would redesign Golden Mile Complex, definitely it will be about what really the people need at the current moment of time. Golden Mile Complex can be converted in such a way where it really caters to the elderly, right? And perhaps there are facilities that can help them.
The idea of separation with integration, meaning to say that I wouldn't really force merge the new building with the old. Perhaps that could be a successful way to approach the architectural design strategy of the new building and how to conserve the old Golden Mile Complex as well.
I would design it as a campus, as a university building. That's my hope for the young people of Singapore, right?
This adaptive reuse will be one big takeaway for future architects like myself to really consider before working on a project in the future.
All great civilizations, all great cultures keep their past because the past informs the present, which in turn inform the future. We can be the leader in that angle, and that is my wish for the future of architecture in Singapore.